Okay, well, it is about a minute until we go live, but I still wanted to just jump in here just a tad bit early because I know a lot of you are still logging on. So go ahead and get situated, grab a place to sit where you're not disturbed because there's going to be a flow of information coming to you that you definitely want to make sure you get every nook and cranny of it. So again, we probably got about another 15 seconds before we go. People are still jumping in, but I'll go ahead and get it started as of right now. Good afternoon and good morning to some of you, depending on where you're joining us. My name is Rodney S. Jones. I am the President and CEO of Adjustment Bureau Consulting. And essentially what I do is help people adjust their interpersonal skills, really help them to enhance what I call their professional charisma by focusing on certain intangibles, certain qualities about them that they can just tweak here or there, with the end result being them doing better in what they do, whatever their career is, for them to have a lot more success doing it. And so I want to thank you all for actually carving out a portion of your day, especially today being a Friday. I know here in the greater Atlanta area it is deceiving. There are blue skies and the sun is out, but I think it's about 29 degrees. So to those of you on the West Coast, we're not trying to hear it. Go brag to somebody else about the weather. Nonetheless, today's webinar, 7 Tactics of Highly Persuasive Professionals, How to Persuade Like a Pro. First of all, every person on this webinar has something in common, and that is persuasion is directly related to your success. And for that reason, I'm honored as well as excited to be among peers. By the end of this webinar, a few things are going to happen. One, you're going to have practical methods of persuasion that you can use immediately. The other thing that's going to happen by the end, I'm going to show you exactly how I can help you personally and how you can get one-on-one help from me to gain a competitive advantage within your own market space. And then the other thing that's going to happen is 3 random people are going to be chosen to receive something that I think is special that they can actually use at a later date. So you want to make sure you don't miss anything. You want to make sure it's kind of like putting your raffle ticket in. You know, if you're not in it, you're not going to win it. I don't want to take too much time introducing myself and giving my background because this webinar is all about you, but I do want to connect with you all in some way so that you know a little bit about the voice on the other end of the screen. Again, like I said, my name is Rodney Jones, and this is a picture of my family, my wife Ina, and our daughter Daphne. She's 11 years old. We moved here from Texas. We're Texas people, kind of almost born and bred. I was born in Chicago, moved to Texas at an early age, pretty much grew up in a small town called Killeen. And for those of you who are familiar with Baylor University, that's just ripping it up all over the football field, Killeen is about 45 minutes away from there. Just to give you a little bit of geographic relation to where I'm talking about. I went to school at the University of Texas. I majored in music, vocal performance. And you say, well, why is this guy talking to us about persuasion? How'd that happen? Throughout the webinar, I'm going to give you a little, snippets and a little backstage pass into my life to let you know how it all came about. But what happened was when I was 22 in college, I had just changed my major, so I was actually about to re-up for some more years. I got a call from my mother, and as a result of that call, I ended up taking full legal custody of my 2 younger sisters. They were 12 and 15 at the time. And I didn't know what to do with a 12 and 15-year-old, as well I shouldn't have. I was only 22 and I was in college. But nonetheless, I remember standing before a Texas judge, and the judge asking me, "Young man, what makes you think that you can provide for these girls?" And I said the best thing I knew was I can at least give them a meal. Little did I know, 12-year-old and a 15-year-old girl need a little bit more than food. They were boys, probably would have been a different story, but that led me to, leaving school, what most would call prematurely, without my degree, without a lot of experience, but, just had to make it happen. The way my wife comes into the picture, we were high school, not sweethearts. I knew her in biology class, I had a big crush on her, and I did one of those things where you pass a note, says, "Do you like me?" Check yes or check no. Yeah, don't laugh. I know you're laughing. I didn't get my note back. 17 years later, she found me. All of those feelings are still there, and that's actually how I proposed to her. Will you marry me? Check yes or check no. So that note I got back, and we got it framed. Enough about me. Now, let's get on to the good stuff. One of the things that I always tell people when I address an audience, when I sit with a client individually, is I want them to get a return on investment for their time. Right now, you all have carved out a portion of your day to sit, listen to someone that you've never met with the hopes of leaving with something of value. And so my commitment to you is to make sure that you get a return on that investment. And so with that, I'll say that this webinar is not going to be like most that you've attended. So again, I want you to grab a pen or pencil, something to write on, because there are going to be thought-provoking questions throughout. Questions that I won't necessarily need to give you the answer to, but questions that you will want to go back and look at for yourself to say, okay, how can I tweak myself here or there? These questions are actually going to help me get to that next step. There's even going to be a little to-do, a little homework at the end. So that's just to get you engaged and to make sure that you stay connected with the material long after the webinar is concluded. Now, the other reason that this webinar is not going to be like others is because you're going to get something new. What I mean by that is everything that I'm about to share with you has been received by other executives and employees of Fortune 500 companies as well as some small businesses. And these are just some of the companies that have benefited from our solutions. And when I say that, I mean that the information and the material and the content that you're going to receive today on Persuasion, employees and executives at these companies, Edward Jones, AT&T, Ford, Procter & Gamble, Valero, Goodwill, Coach, they've received the same information. So you're basically going, I'm putting you in the boardroom, in the practice room, in the training room that they were in. Not only did these companies receive this information, but there are several others. You see on here local banks in the greater Atlanta area. You see Hallmark, you see Hasbro Games, you see Holiday Inn, you see some universities. Again, these people thought that it was valuable and necessary and much needed information to get to their staff. And so you're about to get the same thing. My personal client list includes the U.S. Marine Corps logistics base. That was fun. That was an experience unlike any other. That was pretty great. Gwinnett Technical College here again in the greater Atlanta area. AIG Valak. I'm pretty sure a lot of you know AIG for probably not so good reasons, but Valak is their retirement arm. I've actually presented and trained their employees, as well as the General Services Administration here in the greater Atlanta area. And as a matter of fact, next week, Monday, I'm giving a diversity training at Kennesaw State University. Now, one of the things about the content you're going to receive is not only has it been delivered in training sessions, but I also do executive coaching where the same content has been proven to be beneficial for individuals, as well as deliver it in a keynote fashion for some of these people and many others. So again, this webinar is all about you and why you're here, so let's get into it. One of the things that I like to do anytime I'm presenting information, I like to validate. And I like to use credible resources and people who I think are, you know, probably a lot smarter than me to make my point. One of those being the Harvard Business Review. Now, again, Harvard and smart kind of go hand in hand. So if they say something, it's you can probably take it as truth, at least fact. Here, I just want to hone in on a couple of things. One, this was an article that was done in 1998. The first sentence pretty much tells it all. If there was ever a time for business people to learn the fine art of persuasion, it's now. What about Forbes? Forbes is a trusted source, you know, all things business. This article was released back in 2010. It says leadership is all about emotional persuasion. The communicating a leader does is all essentially persuasion. That's what leaders do. They persuade people. Leadership is persuasion. Persuasion is emotional. All right, but let's keep going. How about the Wall Street Journal? Speaks for itself, right? This was just last month. This is Chief Data Officer Wes Hunt of Nationwide Mutual Insurance. He was doing an interview, and someone asked him, you know, Mr. Hunt, with all these new data sources, how do you discern the signal from the noise? His answer was immediately, finding talent is my largest challenge. He went on to say, you know, I can find people with quantitative skills. It's good to have people who have technical skills and to create models, but he says, what I need is someone who is able to persuade. He says, that's the hardest part, is the persuasion. He says, that's what we really like to grow, is that talent. So I think we've validated it. I think we've looked at the fact that since 1998, it's been something that business minds have sought to be much needed and something that is proven to be effective. And up until just last month, a talent that we can say Mr. Hunt is probably not alone that he's looking for and would like to grow. So that's why we're here. 7 tactics of highly persuasive professionals, how to persuade like a pro. The thing that you want to make sure that you know about persuasion is that it's the single most important business leadership and personal skill. Think about it. Without the skill of persuasion, leaders wouldn't be able to lead. Salespeople, you wouldn't be able to sell. Persuasion is basically the key to success in every facet of life. And the bad thing about it is people don't understand the key elements of persuasion, and even fewer people apply the process correctly. So let's look at our objectives. For the remainder of our time, we're going to do a lot of things. We're going to first of all define persuasion. We're going to, start off simple, and then we're going to grow from there. We're going to get you to know the right and wrong ways to persuade, because there are wrong ways. We're going to take a little science class. We're not going to get too deep. Again, you're talking to a music major. We're going to take a little science class and get you to understand how the brain processes logic and emotion. Then I'm going to help you. I'm going to show you how you can apply the most persuasive appeal in every sales, every marketing, and every leadership presentation that you have beyond this webinar. I'm going to show you how to do the quote-unquote heavy lifting, so your clients, your customers, whoever your audience is, so they don't have to. And I'm going to show you how to help your clients, how to persuade them by helping them basically make easy decisions, because in the end, that's what we all want to do. So first and foremost, how do you define persuasion? When you think about it, persuasion, like success, like many other words, has a lot of definitions. One of them, it's the art of getting someone to do something that he or she wouldn't necessarily do if you didn't ask. Pretty true. It's, when someone influences another person's thoughts, their attitudes, their feelings, their behaviors, their actions. At that point, you can say persuasion has occurred. And then again, Harvard Business Review says persuasion is the business language, is the language of business leadership, excuse me. For the sake of this webinar, though, this is how I want to define it. Persuasion as being a process of leading others to a shared solution and a desired action. So let's start to look at some of the right and wrong. You see, researchers have actually concluded that most people break persuasion down into these 3 main parts. And you say, okay, well, what's wrong with that? Well, again, leaning on someone's brain who's a little bit more effective than mine, Dr. Jay Conger there at the University of Southern California, USC, says the reality is that following this process, the one outlined above, is one surefire way to fail at persuasion. You say, well, wait a minute, hold on. This is stuff that I've been told, from the beginning, in sales classes, and, people have trained me in this way. You say, well, what's wrong with this? Why is it a surefire way to fail? Well, what's wrong with the first step? Well, let's look at it. When you actually start with your own position, you cut off the most important thing that you got to learn, which is the other person's needs, their wants, their goals, and their internal powers. You say, okay, Rodney, no problem. You got me on that one. I understand. Well, what about the second one? Why is it? I mean, I've been told all along, shouldn't I always validate my position with relevant facts and data? No. Data does not persuade. Data is boring. Don't believe me? Take a statistics class. Let me know how much fun you have. No one wants to sit through a bunch of number crunching, and, well, I say no one, few people, because there are some out there. You say, okay, I get that one. Well, what about the third step? Well, what's wrong with the third step is this. There's no way that you can have closure until you know what moves the client to action. You see, every persuasion process is going to involve these 3 building blocks. Logos, which is logic, pathos, which is emotion or automatic way of thinking, and ethos, which is based on authority and credibility. So these 7 tactics or powers that we're going to talk about are going to build on these 3 building blocks. There's actually been research done that has proven that most people, here's a nice little phrase, most people all of the time and all of the people most of the time are in a non-thinking automatic mode. I know some of you said, what? Yeah. Most people all of the time and all people most of the time are in a non-thinking automatic mode. That is, they want to make emotional decisions. And that's the mode that they're in. So the problem is most presentations are geared to heavy thinking and analytical modes. You say, okay, well, why should I avoid analysis? What's wrong with evaluation? What's wrong with careful thinking? Absolutely nothing other than the fact that it's hard work. Think about it. If most people all the time, all of the people most of the time are in an automatic thinking mode, what's wrong with analysis and evaluation and careful thinking is it makes people, figuratively swim upstream against their natural mental process. And so when they do that, it's something that's going to be difficult. It's something that's not going to be, enjoyable. I mean, here's some research that scientists have done. Neurological research says that there's a brain wave that's emitted when we're challenged with a heavy thinking project, like a math problem, right? Now, those same neurological scientists have concluded that we emit the precisely same brain wave when we're forced to plunge our hands into a bucket of water. You say, well, how does that compare? Well, there's a brain wave that goes off when you're given this trigonometry problem that says, I don't want to deal with it. That's too much. Someone else do it. I need an easier way. There's brain waves that go off. The same brain waves go off when someone says, hey, here's a bucket of ice cold water. Give me your hand. What's going through the mind is, I don't want to deal with that. That's too much. Give me an easier way. Truth is that we encounter too many decisions throughout the course of a day, and it would be virtually impossible and definitely burdensome if we tried to analyze each and every one. And that's why we tend to lean more towards the automatic responses, right? So let's keep it going. There we go. Like I said, we're going to go to science class a little bit, but not too much, but it is imperative to know a few things. So in addition to knowing why or how we respond certain ways, it's equally important to know how the brain thinks in these situations. So first, there are analytical thinkers, right? Analytical thinkers is just that. They think logically, systematically work out problems. They systematically work out decisions with analysis, with judgment, with evaluation. Then you have the automatic thinker. The automatic thinker, this person basically goes on their gut feelings. They base their decisions on automatic or emotional responses. Now here's the thing about the brain. The brain is actually hardwired to respond to most stimuli in a way that helps us make easy and quick and correct decisions. So when you learn how to help other people make easy, quick, automatic, non-analytical decisions, you're actually using their inborn powers within themselves to have a great effect on the decision that's going to come forth. And then there's the ethos thinker. The ethos thinker, this person chooses to make their decision based on the authoritative presence and professional credibility of the person addressing them. I'm going to prove it to you in a few minutes because we've all done it. But remember what Dr. Conger from USC said. If we're latching ourselves to that 1, 2, 3 way of persuading people, that is the surefire way to fail. And that's what we don't want to do. Now, these tactics or powers that we're going to discuss, they make up the core of this webinar. But before we talk about the powers, we need to address what power is. So what is it? Well, it's a decision shortcut that bypasses pain. We proved that. It bypasses stress and hard work and analytical thinking. It's actually the brain's internal navigation system that allows your followers to quickly and automatically make the right decisions without doing the heavy lifting. And when power itself, when you activate it properly, it creates an automatic compliance to any persuasion requests. So moving forward, here are the goals that we're going to achieve. We're going to understand the value and impact of each power. We're going to I'm going to help you select, I'm going to help you integrate and organize specific powers for each persuasion situation that you may encounter. And then I'm going to make sure to give you the components to consciously plan for and structure your next client engagement so that you can do exactly as we've defined, which is lead someone to a shared solution and a desired action. And I'll say this, if you have the opportunity and you feel brave, when you get finished with the webinar, take it home. Try it on your spouse, your significant other. If you're going out this weekend, try it. If you crash and burn, just don't mention my name. You didn't get it from me. But I will say this picture of this guy, this is actually me trying to convince my wife that a 90-inch TV is a good Christmas gift. So as I'm talking to you, I'm brushing up myself because I'm going to get my television. Okay, the first power, the friendship power. Now, I would say that you're actually already using some of these powers, but again, my goal is to make you consciously aware of all 7 so that you have an array of choices when you decide which situation requires a certain power. So with the friendship power, I want to go back a little bit. Do you all remember the dreaded friend zone back in school? It's that place that you could never get out of. Once you're in it, you're stuck. It's that place where, you know, people say, oh, he's just a friend. And I'm speaking primarily about relationships with the opposite sex. I know for me, and if you hear a little bit of angst in my voice, it's real. For me, it was, you know, oh, Rodney's like a friend. Oh, he's like a friend. Couldn't get out of the friend zone. And like I said, most of these powers are innately woven into our fabric, even at a young age. We just didn't know how to employ them right now in our careers to get the same result that we got before. Think about it. As a child, you remember this scenario? Someone has something you want, candy, bike, a ball, whatever, and they don't want to give it up. And then you say this one phrase I know everyone has ordered. You say, please, I'll be your best friend. Yeah, you're laughing because you remember it. I'll be your best friend. I'll be your best friend. Why did we go there? Because even as a child, even as a youth, we understood the value of the friendship power. We knew that that power could get that Kit Kat that that person didn't want to give us. Again, I might be digging a little too deep. You hear a little bit in my voice because I had to use it quite often. In any case, let's look at statistics. So let's look at a little bit of data to surround it. Not much, but a little bit. Did you know that actually 4 out of 5 jury decisions are made before any evidence is ever presented, even though the only charge the judge is given is to determine guilt or innocence based on the evidence? But statistics show juries don't even weigh facts. They don't weigh logic. They don't weigh reason. And that is precisely why lawyers are doing what you're doing right now. Lawyers are actually signing up to take more and more training in persuasion. So when we talk about the friendship power, we're talking about a power that encompasses all elements that create feelings of positive relations. The goal of the friendship power is to bond with other people by finding common ground, common interests, common goals. And the strongest element of the friendship power is similarity. Mary Kay Ash, the well-known founder of Mary Kay Cosmetics, said, you need to pretend that every single person you meet has a sign around his or her neck that says, make me feel important. So I mentioned mirroring. The way to master similarity, or I mentioned similarity, the way to master this similarity with others is through a concept called mirroring. Now, the genesis behind mirroring can be dated back to hunter-gatherer days. There's a book called The Charisma Myth by Olivia Fox Cabane, and she does an excellent job actually illustrating this point. Back in hunter-gatherer days, you have to understand that, you know, English, you know, talking in words, this wasn't necessarily something that everybody did. As a matter of fact, it wasn't around then. It was mostly by sight, by action, smell, things like that. So if I'm a hunter and I see the bush rustling in the distance, I have a split second to determine fight or flight, friend or foe. And as this object is coming to me, let's say it's another hunter. Well, the way that I'm going to differentiate them or distinguish them as a friend or foe is by the garbs, the garment that they wear. And by that, I can then discern if this person is someone that I want to let into my circle. Well, fast forward some thousands of years to right now, we do the same thing. Think about it. The friends that you have, they're a mirror image or similar to you. And that's the thing that makes the mastery of similarity what makes it work. So let's look at this list. friendship elements, power elements that you can look at. Leisure time. These are questions that you could ask to actually find common ground with people. Leisure time. Hey, what do you do when you're not working so hard? Background. Where are you from originally? What brought you here? Your business. How'd you get started here? Education. Where'd you go to school? That's a question that most people ask. And then sports. You know, most people, male and female alike, you know, can strike up a conversation about sports. But even if they can't, you have these others that you can lean on. Now, here's the thing. There's another book that I like called Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. He actually stated, and it was quoted in his book, that fortunate indeed is the person who has discovered how to give sex emotion an outlet through some form of creative effort, for he has by that discovery lifted himself to the status of a genius. Now, I put that in there in confidence that I'm speaking to an adult audience, and so I'm going to continue along this vein because it's a very important point. But let me break down what he's saying. He's saying that there's a certain vibe, a certain brainwave, a certain aura that you emit to others when there is an opportunity for sexual companionship or intimate companionship, that if we could find a way to transmute that, to translate that into other areas of our life to get results, that we would lift ourselves to what he called a genius. So I'm going to throw a dare out there. Here's a challenge. The next time you're in a client engagement, sales call, networking event, whatever it is, I dare you to approach it mentally as if you're asking that person out on a date. Because if we look at these elements, I mean, if you don't know how to date, if you just take this list right here, you can at least be on the first track, because these are questions that you would ask someone if you were trying to get close to them. Well, in business, that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to get close to your client so that you can help them make an emotional decision versus a logical decision. But yeah, I dare you to do it mentally. Again, mentally. Just approach the next call, the next engagement, the next networking event as if you're trying to go out on a date with this person. You know, this is something that I had to do when I left school. When I left school, I didn't have a degree. My major was in music. I had very little experience in anything. And the first job I got, well, the second job I got was with a company called Hall Kenyon. They did IT staffing. Now, I didn't take an IT class. I didn't take an engineering class. Again, I was a music major. So all I had to go on was let me create a relationship. And this friendship power was where it all hinged. Let's talk about the next power, the authority power. The authority power, now this one is a critical power, is actually a prerequisite for all the others, because authority is usually defined as a position such as a lawyer, a manager, a teacher, a policeman. The authority power uses this thing called the rightness of the request based on the association of the role. So in other words, you want your client to think, the request that you're giving me just feels right because of the role that you have in my life, right? Let's look at it. The doctor's office. We've all been here at some point or another where you walk into an office, you're thinking, what's about to happen? This stranger comes in, especially if, you know, this is a person you've never met, doctor you've never been to, and he says, okay, Mr. and Mrs. Smith. He's not even looking at you. That's how confident he is and it's going to work. Okay, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, I'm going to need you to take off all your clothes so we can get started. And what do? We say, okay. And we do it. I mean, think about that. Logically, that is probably not a good decision. But why do we do it? Because this doctor has with maybe knowingly or unknowingly, he's already activated the authority power. It's no different from when a CPA tells their client to list certain items on their tax return. The client doesn't go to the library and start studying the tax code. Or what about when a lawyer gives legal advice? The client doesn't go and start looking at all the lawyer's previous cases. And so for those of you in the financial industry, remember, you're the one with the license. You're the one with the knowledge. You're the one with the expertise. The client, they didn't study for and pass any insurance or series exam. They didn't go through what you did in order to get that position at the bank. They didn't do that. Regardless of what your profession is, there was some knowledge that went into it. And so just like this doctor, you have to understand that you're no less than the CPA or the lawyer. You're the authority. And you have to act as such with the same confidence that the doctor comes in, not even looking at you, and can tell a complete stranger to take off their clothes. You need to be able to tell your client to take the next step. But in order to do that, there's a few elements you want to make sure that you have in your back pocket. First and foremost, dress, your attire, how you look. Again, going back to similarity, this evokes strong authority in how we dress. Your accomplishments, your education. right? You want to understand that this can mean, education doesn't necessarily mean how many degrees you have, how many letters you have behind your name. It can mean just being well read, making sure that you're up to date on current affairs. The easiest way that you can do this, I mean, is instead of staring at your phone for Facebook, pull up CNN app. Look for things like that. What else? The research. Take advantage of the internet, because anytime you can prove to someone that you have a knowledge base on a certain topic, then you're adding to your credibility. You're adding to the authority level that they see in you. And then endorsements. You want to be careful that you don't burn bridges, because credible people in your past, they're good resources for endorsements. So how does this work? Does the authority power really work? Well, I think so, because where real estate says it's all about location, 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 the key to persuasion is credibility, credibility, credibility. But the reason why it works is because the client wants, again, they want to make a quick and easy decision. Expertise, what it does is it gives your client this need for that you're a credible source. They have source credibility with you, and they have a confidence and a trust in the in the fact that you're going to lead them down the right path. And essentially what it comes down to is someone has to do the grunt work. And anytime you can show yourself to have done the mental heavy lifting for someone else, and they don't have to do it, now you're a credible source for them. The next power, the consistency power. The consistency power is all about the feeling of comfort. This makes individuals feel comfortable. Leaders persuade by making people feel comfortable. The consistency power actually forms a bedrock of that internal guidance system. And the secret to benefiting from the consistency power is you need to learn why or what the person that you're trying to persuade, what they're comfortable with. And by learning about what they're comfortable with and how they've acted in the past about certain issues, you can then frame your request so that a positive decision will be consistent with their past actions. You want to set up basically a consistency safe zone for them, and for each person to make a relatively free, risk-free, and comfortable decision. You say, well, why is it that consistency is an important power? Well, the one answer is people are just slaves to consistency and conformity. I mean, think about it. We use past data to make easy, safe, comfortable, non-thinking decisions to guide our current decisions. I mean, it happens every year, especially around this time. It's open enrollment for most companies, health benefits. You'll have 2 or 3 people sitting around the table, and you know what they say? Which one are you picking? Which one are you picking? So see, there's this internal guidance system that compels people to be consistent with the way they see themselves and the way that they see their admired peers. And it started at birth. From birth, we've been recording this emotional database of feelings based on past performances. So that's why the consistency power is so important. You say, okay, well, how do voters vote? What does consistency have to do? Well, it's the same thing with the open enrollment example I use. Regardless of the issues, most voters tend to vote with their party, regardless of the issues. How do thrifty people act? Well, thrifty people don't go for all the bells and whistles. Spenders spend, savers save, risk takers are adventurous, and risk avoiders are conscious. And it's all about past performances. Okay. So in order to know how to frame your request, there are a few things that you want to make sure that you understand about the person that you're trying to persuade. And one of them is, what kind of thinker are they? What kind of habits do they have? Are they an automatic or analytic thinker? That is, their decisions and their action modes, do they change? The answer is, honestly, very seldomly do decisions and action modes change. Consistent is actually virtually guaranteed. I mean, so you need to learn which mode your client employs and then frame your presentation accordingly. Remember, most people all of the time and all of the people most of the time are in an automatic mode. Then you want to know about their spending habits. You want to know things like, do they try to keep up with the Joneses or do they penny pinch? Are their children in public school or private school? Do they shop at Ross or Neiman's? Does he wear French cuffs or barrel cuff? Does she wear Jimmy Choo's or Nine West? I mean, spending habits strongly influence a lot of decisions, and they're easy to learn and actually easy to match your proposal to once you do the work. Then there's social status. People strive for consistency with regards to their status perception, how they're perceived. They want to maintain the status quo in the eyes of other people. So you want to know what their social status is. Learn the status of their business, their economy, the status of their social peers, and then you can frame your comments accordingly. You want to know if they're risk takers or if they avoid risk. So you want to seek out information on past decision, past actions, and plans that involve risk. And you either want to show your suggestions cater to adventure, high rewards, or personal challenge, or the flip side, you want to show that your suggestions cater to safety, trust, peace of mind, or the reduction of risk. You want to know about their habits. And I mentioned it before, we're all slaves to our habits. Most people are going to be that consistency, it's just ingrained in them. So people are consistent with their ingrained approach. And then prior decisions. You want to seek out patterns and position your material to show consistency with their prior actions. The more you know about past decisions, about how their past decisions were made, the more you'll be able to, persuade them on future decisions. And just to, kind of paint the picture, again, you want to learn so much about them and their past decisions that you can say, okay, this is what they'll do. You want to become this person right here. You want to be able to take all of the pieces that your client gives you and put them into the framework that paints a picture that'll persuade them to action. The next power, the reciprocity power. Now, the reciprocity power is a well-documented, this is actually a psychological requirement to have the recipient of a gift give back something in return. But the best thing about this power is that you create the indebtedness. It's like this picture. So the first thing that this tells you, if we talk about, okay, what lesson can we learn from this? Well, lesson number one is you need to put your piggy bank in a better place. Lesson number two probably is somebody's in trouble. But once we get past those, let's look at this. There's some coinage in there, and yeah, you can fit some dollar bills into that piggy bank. But the truth of the matter is this IOU is actually worth more than anything that can go in that bank because, again, the core of the reciprocity power is that you create the indebtedness. You call the shot. Now, with regards to giving, there are certain things that you can and can't give depending on your industry, but here's a very good list, and there's some space that I provided there under each one to give you an opportunity to think what else could you add to this list. But the secret to employing the reciprocity power is to successfully evaluate, then select the appropriate gift for each persuasion attempt. Now, again, these are just a few items you can consider when planning your next presentation. So, if you look at the physical, flowers, candy, product samples. If you're in business, product samples is probably a big thing. Entertainment, golf outings, gift certificates, sports tickets. Again, I know in certain industries there's a limit to what you can give. Information is free. People love to be informed because information is what moves them forward. Don't inundate them with information. Don't cater so much to the statistical and logical side, but give them enough to intrigue them where you trigger that emotional part of them. And then the best of all of these is in this last category, personal gifts from the heart. There's nothing that moves people and that creates an indebtedness to you like praise, a sincere compliment, your time. Again, I mentioned in the beginning, I appreciate the fact that you all took the time to not only register, but to receive and read each email and then carve out a portion of your Friday and sit on the other end of this screen, on the other end of this microphone, and listen to someone that you haven't met with the hopes of having a return on your investment. So that is something that's from the heart, and that's something that can't be duplicated. And so you want to use these. So before your next appointment, make a thorough written list of everything that you could possibly bring with you. And you got categories here to kind of lead you along the right path. Then you need to determine which one is most appropriate. And here's the key. Even if the gift isn't immediately reciprocated, it's all right. Because what you're doing is you're building IOUs to be called on at some point in the future. They're going to owe you. Oh, yeah. And they're going to have to pay. It's no different from, yeah, here you go, nice with a shiny smile. But I'm telling you, there's going to come a day when I ask for a referral. There's going to come a day when I circle back around to this product, to this service. All right, the next power, the hope power. This power is probably the one power that if we're going to say it triggers an emotional response is this power, because hope actually drives most, if not all, human motivation. The foundation for most human decision making and action is hope, because decisions and actions, to achieve hope or needs or wants and dreams, they always trump logic, reason, and cognitive thought. This is a power that's actually easy to activate, and sometimes it may be activated without you knowing. But what you want to do is you want to add the right powers, other powers, to the hope power, and then you get a formidable multi-pronged arsenal for success. I like to call it a power combination. You see, when you hope for things that you want to have, things that you want to own, things that you want to be, those hopes are prime motivators for basically all of your human activity. Facts, logic, rational thought, they play a very negligible role when the hope power is actually activated. I mentioned to you earlier that I took custody of my 2 younger sisters when I was in college. That was a decision purely based on hope. Think about it. I'm 22, I'm in college, and who logically says, yeah, I'm going to take custody of a 15-year-old and a 12-year-old, and everything's going to be great? Because statistically, no, it doesn't. There was no logic in that decision. As a matter of fact, many of my peers actually asked me, why didn't you think about that? In my eyes, it was nothing to think about. You know, the hope in me was the hope to give them a better life, the hope to be the reason why they have better than what we were accustomed to having at home. It was all fueled by hope, and that power it consumed me to the point to where as I justified leaving school, and I don't regret that decision. It consumed me to the point to where as it forced me into an arena where I had to compete with people who had some 10, 20, 30 years of experience on top of me, but it was all because of hope. So when you can tap into someone's hope, what you've done is you've hit the gold mine. Charles Revson, the founder of Revlon Cosmetics, he says it best. In the factory, we make cosmetics. In the store, we sell hope. Think about it. For those that use their products, each one of these people looks in the mirror, sees something they don't like, and then they say, you know what, I hope that I could look different. They go down to the store, they purchase cosmetics because of whatever reason. I'm not knocking it. I'm not banging on it. I'm just saying that it was fueled in hope, and this is how they've built their business, based on hope. Now, some of the hope elements: happiness. You want to learn what makes your client happy. More time, more productivity. When you can tell someone that you're going to save them time and increase their productivity, now you're tapping into their hope. Their health, especially in today's day and age. Hope for better health is something that everybody wants because the fitness industry proves that every January through March when people sign up for new gym memberships, and by March they've all tailored off. But I'm pretty sure in those 3 months they make most of their revenue. Right? Goals and ambitions. We'll talk about goals in a later slide, but yeah, goals and ambitions. What are your goals? What are your ambitions? What are you trying to accomplish? When you tap into that, you're tugging on that hope factor. Then there are fears. Some people do stuff just out of fear of loss, fear of not living up to the standard, fear of failure, whatever it is. What are their fears? Let me help you calm some of those fears. What does the hope look like for you to eliminate some of those fears? And then the opposite of this is success. How successful do you hope to be? Financial profit, avoiding loss, peer acceptance. And the last one I like, ego, fame or notoriety. Some people, you just have to pull out the white glove and stroke their ego because they see themselves as bigger than they are. You say, okay, well, if that's what you hope to be, let me show you how to get there. You know, fame or notoriety, whatever it may be. The next power, the power of persuasion and goals. You say, well, how does this go in? Well, I'm pretty sure most of you, if not all of you on this call, have at some point had a manager come to you and say, okay, it's goal setting time. And they've dragged you into their office, either quarterly, semi-annually, or annually, and say, okay, let's talk about your goals. Let's set some goals. Well, let me ask you this. When's the last time that you actually used that same tactic on the person you're trying to persuade? Talk about their goals. Help them find out what it is that they're looking to achieve. Because when you do that, you've actually done a few things. Once your perspective has been taken, the first step towards the goal, is they're now accountable to you. And when they're accountable to you, you now are an authority figure to them because they have to answer to you. So the goal creates decisions. Those decisions are kind of based on accountability, and accountability breeds authority. So now you have what I call a power combination. And the point of the matter is, People with goals succeed because they know where they're going, and that's your job. And if you're going to persuade using goals, you have to show them how to get there. Show them how making each small step towards their decision coming to pass is going to achieve their goal. I like this at the bottom. When you know where you're going, when you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there. So how do you make sure that they know where they're going? You have to make sure that they're setting clear goals, right? That they're measurable, that they have an endpoint, right? That they have a time, they're time sensitive, they have a target date. What resources will be needed in order to achieve these goals, right? And then the cost. Is there a cost associated with it? Again, it's been done to you several times. Why not flip the page and do it to your client? Because at this point, you're persuading them based on something that they want to achieve. You're just setting yourself as the authority power in their life to help them get there. But all the while, it's about goals. But you want to make sure that you help them set, clear and reachable goals. Now, here's a little exercise with goals. So here's a statement. We're going to look at this statement, and then we're going to determine which one of these components does this statement contain. I want to increase my sales this year. Which one of those does it contain? Now, turn this statement into a complete goal. How will you measure it? What are the resources? What are the costs? What is the realistic endpoint? Again, what I'm giving you is sort of a roadmap to persuade the person that you're talking to with the goal power. And this is how you would walk them through it, because in essence, this is how you've been walked through it. So if it works, use it. And now we're at the power of persuasion and communication. This is a very, I would say, intense power because it has a lot of components. So please, make sure you pay attention to this one, because if you don't get any other ones, this one is vital, because we communicate all day, every day, right? Now, when we communicate, you have to make sure that the message is received as it's intended. It's not about, oh, I meant to say this. It's about what was perceived. You have to understand that there's a 4-step process that you want to follow when having effective communication. You want to organize what you're going to say. You want to deliver it. Then you want to check for perceptions, get feedback, and then you want to agree on action steps. Now, when you communicate, there are 2 other skills you want to make sure that you put in play: questioning and listening. With questioning, you want to make sure you ask open and closed-ended questions. Open-ended questions in the beginning, closed-ended questions towards the end. And then as far as listening, you want to make sure that you're an active listener, not a passive listener. An active listener is actually someone that listens to the underlying tones, someone that reads between the lines, someone that can decipher the mood of what the person is saying. The passive listener is just listening to the words. There's a line in a movie. It's an old movie. Most of you may have seen it. White Man Can't Jump, with Wesley Snipes and Woody Harrelson, where they're in the back of the car, and Wesley Snipes puts on some music, and it's Jimi Hendrix, and Woody Harrelson's character starts singing. He's like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "I'm singing to Jimmy." He's like, "You can't hear Jimmy." He said, "That's the problem. You hear Jimmy. I listen to Jimmy." And they have this back and forth about hearing and listening. And, it ends up, he's like, "I can hear Jimmy. I can hear Jimmy." So when you talk about communication and active listening, just remember that, are you listening to or are you hearing Jimmy? I like this. There's a world waiting to be heard. We somewhat listen all day, every day, but the fact is we're not really paying too close of attention. Now, those are the 7 tactics of highly persuasive professionals. Now you have everything you need to persuade like a pro. Let's recap. We talked about the friendship power. Remember, the goal of the friendship power is all about bonding, finding a common ground, common interests, common goals, and it's about similarity. Think dating, right? There's the authority power. The authority power, in this one, you got to remember, you're the authority. You want whoever you're talking to, whoever the person is you're trying to persuade, you want them to feel like the request that you're making just makes sense because of your dare. What's your dare? We talked about it. Your dress, your accomplishments, the research and the endorsements that you have. So think dare, D-A-R-E, dress, accomplishments, research, and endorsements. When you have great dare, then you're an authority. We talked about the consistency factor. the consistency power. Remember, this power, the secret to this power is to learn what the person you're trying to persuade will be comfortable with. You need to know their thought process, their spending habits, their social norms, their risk tolerance, their prior decisions. We talked about the reciprocity power. Remember, in this one, you create indebtedness, an IOU that must be repaid at some point in the future. Then the hope power. Remember, we hope for things that we want to have, things we want to own, people we want to be, and facts, logic, and rational thought are basically irrelevant when it comes to hope. Power of persuasion and setting goals. You want to help the person set goals. You want to make sure that, okay, they understand that me sitting down and helping them achieve this goal, I'm going to give them several action steps in between now and their destination point. This is what makes them accountable to you. Once they're accountable to you, you're in a position of authority, hence the authority power. Now you've activated a power combination, and you got them. It's a wrap. And last but not least, we talked about communication. You know, we just mentioned this, but again, it's worth repeating. It's about understanding and being understood. Remember that 4-step process. Remember to question with open-ended questions and listen. You want to be an active listener where you read between the lines, not just a passive listener where you only pay attention to what is said. Again, something that you can practice. Go home to your spouse, your significant other, and listen to them. Put your phone down, and you can practice these things immediately. They will let you know exactly what's going on inside of them. And then when you get to the workplace, you can do the same thing. Listen to what that client is telling you. Don't just hear them. Remember, I can hear Jimmy. I can hear Jimmy. That's what you want to remember. Okay? Now, with that, remember in the beginning I told you that there's going to be a little bit of homework, and this is what it is. So in these next few moments as we close here, you know, I want you to jot this down and just basically list 6 things that you think that you can change personally to help you persuade better, and then make 2 of them a goal. Make 2 of them a short-term goal, and then come up with an action plan. But as we close, I want you to ponder this question. Now, I made a promise earlier, I made a commitment, and that was to make sure that I gave you all an opportunity to have me help you personally, to have some one-on-one help. You know, and I like to pose this question because it's a question that most of us think about when we consider where we are versus, you know, the people in our immediate circle. How'd they get there? I mean, seriously, have you ever wondered why that one person seems to get all the attention from senior management? Why that one person closes so much business? Why is it that even though you work harder than the next person, they seem to get all the breaks? How is it that the person who's been there for less time, they seem to have climbed the ranks a lot more faster than you? Well, I submit to you it's because of charisma. I mentioned it early. Professional charisma. But again, let's go back to the Harvard Business Review and let's see what they say about it. They say emerging leaders and rising entrepreneurs on whom I place my bets have one thing in common, more than just a promising idea. They have a lot of charisma. Again, more credible sources. Forbes, 5 personality traits that employers hire most. You say, well, Rodney, where are you going with this? I already have a job. I'm good. I'm not leaving. Again, I'm all about principles. I'm all about finding a principle that you already activate without even knowing it, extracting it, magnifying it so you can see exactly how that principle works, and then showing you how to translate it into other areas and other facets of your life. So with this, 5 traits that employees hire the most, you say, well, I'm not looking for a job. No problem. These are the same traits, I bet you, that get people promoted. But what happened was you had about 400,000 professionals that were surveyed and asked this question, and here were the results. 57% said they look for intellectual curiosity, someone who can basically think on their own and, you know, who can stir up their own ideas. 58% said someone who is self-monitoring. They don't like babysitting. 61% of executives and professionals surveyed said they look for confidence. 78%, look at the jump, 78% say they look for someone who is actually has high energy. And then 87% of the people surveyed said they look for professionalism. What? What about your school? What about your GPA? What about your experience? Because as a matter of fact, I read in this article where it says most professionals, most executives, they can tell if you have the first 3 in the first 30 seconds. Goes back to that first impression, professional charisma. How are you coming across? Well, don't believe me? Let's look at The Guardian. This is a Pulitzer Prize publication. Headline, using the power of charisma for better leadership. He says charisma is a hugely important leadership trait, but though often seen as elusive, it actually can be learned. What? I always heard that you're either born with it or you're not. You know, you hear people using terms like he has the X factor, she has it. So it makes you think that, yeah, it is elusive. On the contrary, when I left high school, I was not the popular guy in school. If I showed you pictures, you can go on my website and see under the About Me section. I was not the guy that had, you know, I shouldn't have been mad that girls weren't falling all over me. I wasn't that cute. I had no confidence. There was no swagger whatsoever. But when I got to college, I was tired of getting those results, and I wanted to create someone that people would want to be around. I wanted to stand out. I didn't want to change who I was at the core, but I wanted to be someone that could be a leader. I wanted to be someone that people could point to. And what I started doing, unbeknownst to me, was I started learning these behaviors by observing people. And through much trial and error, it was those same behaviors that allowed me to get the positions that I got without having a degree, without having the experience. There were employers on several occasions, and I'm talking about well-known companies within the industry, that told me, you know what, on paper you're not qualified for this, but we're going to go ahead and bring you in on Monday to start. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Because all I had going for me was these learned behaviors. And then I'm reading in the Wall Street Journal, this was back in August, this was in the front page, or not front page, but headline of the personal journal, the Charisma Boot Camp. Anyone can learn to project personal presence, be consistent in work, play, and online. So all of this being proof to things that I had already acted out and actually that I had already coached on. So you say, okay, well, what's the solution? The solution is easy. But first you need to understand, how do we learn? Because we just sat here for the past hour or so, for the past 55 minutes, and we got some good information. Now you have everything you need to go out and be persuasive. You know the 7 tactics of highly persuasive professionals. You yourself can go out and persuade like a pro. But I'm going to tell you this. You need all the pieces. Well, you say, I thought I had all the pieces. Not necessarily talking about the 7 tactics. I'm talking about how we learn. See, if we think about our learning process like a pie, from this hour, I guarantee you, and it's just been scientifically proven, you're only going to retain 10% of it. I hope you got the best 10%, but you know, chances are you're only going to get 10% of it. And that's the truth with any type of classroom experience, be it a lecture class in college, a seminar, a retreat, a workshop we go to. If that's all we do, only 10%. Well, you get another 10% if you repeat what you've learned. You say, well, how do I repeat it? By practicing. But that's just 20%. Look at the jump. Once you get to a point to where you can share what you've learned, you get back from the presentation, your boss asks you, so I want you to stand up on Monday, I want you to lead the Monday meeting and let everybody know what you learned. Your jaws drop because you're like, I only got 10%. But when you're put on the spot and you have to recall on that information and you can actually share it with people who weren't there, you're in a teaching mode. Now what you're doing is you've actually retained 80% of what you've gotten. You say, well, how do I get that over the 20%? Well, you can teach somebody else, when you can train somebody else, when you can take somebody else to the side and say, here's how you do it. And this is how you get 100% of what you just learned. You say, well, why is all this important? Because what I'm offering is a professional charisma boot camp. It's an 8-week, 6 lessons with one goal, for you to gain a professional competitive advantage within your own market space. If today's 1-hour webinar was enough for you to go out and change how your business looks, how your profession is going to look, how you're going to function within your position, can you only imagine what having every component needs? And again, without repeating it, without sharing it, without actually being able to teach someone else, you're only going to retain 60% of it. And that would be a tragedy. It would be a loss, and that's not what I want. And that's why I came up with this this webinar. It's going to start December 4th. It's going to be given weekly, 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. I know Christmas is around there. There will be no sessions on the holiday weeks, but you're going to get a workbook provided, digital copy and a hard copy. Registration is going to be open soon after we disconnect from this webinar, all the way through December 1st. You say, well, what's the price? It's only $499. That's it. But you know what? To some of you, there needs to be a little bit more value to it. You say, well, no problem. How much do you value being able to own any room that you enter? I like to use the phrase, own the room without paying for it. What does that mean to you? What could you do with that particular trait? How much is it to you? What's the value to separate yourself from your peers? To have your presence make an impact on people? What will that do for you? To advance within your career, what are the benefits of that monetarily, or even, mentally or emotionally? To have people like you, trust you, and most importantly, want to be led by you. Again, we're talking about learned behaviors. Some people, they just want to make more money. You say, okay, fine. How much is it valued to you? What's the value of making more money to you? What about stress? To some people, this is priceless, but learning these traits is proven. Most people who know how to operate in a professional, charismatic way, they have less stress. And ultimately, you just want to have your ideas adopted. What is that worth? And so I want to close by, and before we close, I'll go ahead and open up the Q&A for any questions you may have. But with this boot camp, you're going to get exactly what I mentioned earlier as far as how we learn. 10% is me teaching you. Another 10% is going to be you going back and practicing. That other 60%, I'm going to make myself available during the week to have an open Q&A session where you can actually share with others, create a community where we're growing together. And then that last 10%, during the boot camp, some of you will be actually handpicked to train, to teach others, because in the end, you want to make sure that you retain 100% of what you're paying for. And I know it's not the price. I know it's not the price. I know that for most people, it's about you. The sacrifice that you have to make is knowing that you're worth the investment. So you say, well, what's the next step? What do I need to do? You just need to make a decision. From this point forward, you just need to make a decision and decide, okay, what do I want to do? Where do I want to go? I mean, can you imagine what your life would be like if you did not attend this boot camp? Would you continue to struggle? Would you to try to find a way to do it on your own when there's a solution right here for you? What would it be like in 8 weeks from now, if we're having, for you to have a different walk about you, a different confidence, for your presence alone to demand a certain response? I mean, imagine this, 12 months from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, what needs to happen in that period of time for you to feel satisfied with your progress? Certainly it's not more of the same, because you're just going to get more of the same. And so it's change. Something has to change. And change always starts with a sacrifice. Again, I'm not talking about the money. I'm talking about the sacrifice of believing that you're worth the investment. So go to my website. Shortly after this, you can actually register there in the events tab. If you don't see it up, just wait a couple minutes and hit the refresh button. If you have questions, I'll go ahead and put it in, open up the Q&A. But if you don't, let me just say again, thank you all for joining. 7 Tactics of Highly Persuasive Professionals. I'm going to stay on here a little longer, answer any questions you may have. But you all have been great. I thank you for being attentive. And just know that if you ever have a need of anything, you can always reach me. My contact information is right there. Go have a great weekend. And again, thanks again. My name is Rodney S. Jones. I'll talk with you soon.